Now, all this drama when it comes to registration, when it comes to voting, Republicans have been doing all they can to, frankly, stop folks from voting. I told you before, and then I love it when Brandon Cooper was on here and others were totally denying these things, but in Maine, where voters there allowed for same-day voter registration, Republicans in Maine basically got rid of the law. The voters said, "The hell with you." They did a ballot initiative, put it back on the law, on the books the following year on the ballot, and it passed 65%. All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. You heard me talk about our friends at Transatlantic Real Estate, who have created a unique investment opportunity that combines legal marijuana and crowdfunding. Now, of course, let that sink in for a second. Think about the growing momentum around legal marijuana in this country. It's been on various ballot initiatives. And if you're an investor, there's never been a better time for you to get in the game. However, as markets grow, so does the barrier to entry, which means it will take millions, if not billions, to invest, not to mention the risk of starting a new venture. That's what makes this opportunity so special. Transatlantic Real Estate is different, and their business model is very simple to understand. They buy land that supports marijuana grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants. That means that you'll be investing as a landlord of a licensed marijuana farm. The best part, they're using crowdfunding to make it easy for the average person to get in before they take the company public. So for a limited time, you can invest as little as $300 up to $10,000. And look, now remember, you must complete and confirm your application to participate in this opportunity. Now, don't be the person who missed out because you rushed and didn't complete the process. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org for you to get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. And so many people clearly understand that this is basic, why you can't have this automatic voter registration. Well, Democrats, they made it clear that by them taking control over the House, they're going to push forward this particular bill to establish automatic voter registration all across the country. Joining us right now is a member of the House Judiciary Committee, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Houston. Congresswoman, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you so very much. And Roland, thank you for focusing on one of the most continuing domestic crisis in this nation, and that is the ongoing vicious voter suppression that happens across the nation.
You are on this particular committee. Bob Goodlatte has been the chairman of this particular committee, a Republican from Virginia. And after the Shelby v. Holder decision by the Supreme Court to confront Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, he refused to hold any hearings. Anything dealing with voting, he would not even touch. Now that Democrats control the House, now you can put forth various bills to deal with the issue of voting and voter suppression in this nation.
There is no doubt, and we had a conference call of Democratic members of the committee, and the chairman who will ultimately take that position in January from New York, Mr. Nadler, and all of us committed to having voting rights be one or two on the list of immediate action. And let me just indicate the extensive devastation of not proceeding to fix Shelby case that happened in about 2013 or so. We have had all of these years where we have every single year and many, many times throughout the session sought to have the Republicans have a hearing on the fix of the Shelby case and the many bills that were submitted not only by Democrats but by the Congressional Black Caucus, where we rallied the whole Democratic caucus around a fix of Section 5. And that is for your listeners to know that it helps you pre-clear any action. So the action that Kent took in Georgia to thwart, deny, and violate the rights of Stacey and Abrams and all of the voters by purging 50,000 plus would have been subjected to Section 5, and we can assure you that it would not have been allowed. And so the violence that happens is the violence against the individual liberties and rights of citizens not to be counted when they were duly registered and they were actually purged. That was a sad state of affairs, and it's something that we wish to fix immediately. I would make the argument if those individuals had not been purged, rather than the valiant effort that she is now doing to become governor, which she deserves, she would be putting forward her transition team for the governorship in the state of Georgia. And what we see in Florida is equally so. So in addition to Section 5, same-day registration, we're talking about paper trail throughout the nation. We don't have that. Funding to modernize every state and local entity that are still using broke down, outdated machines that don't seem to work or overburdened by the increasing population. You frankly can't use machines that you bought 10 years ago and you've had either double the population, quarter of the population, 10% growth in population. You simply cannot use those machines. And so we want to create and insist of the modernization of the equipment that is used. Then we want to massively do what was done in Florida, which is to restore the rights across the nation, particularly in federal elections, of ex-felons who have done their time and are now out as ex-felons, but are due citizens who deserve the right to have their voting privileges restored. We want that to be a national law and not leave it up to the states, and insist that every single state restore the voting rights of any ex-felon who meets the criteria, as they did in the state of Florida.
And Congresswoman, obviously, if you make this move, it now puts Republicans in a different position. You know, they love to talk about how many Republicans voted for the Voting Rights Act in 1965. And so if the House Democrats are able to move this bill in January, it should be one. I personally think it should be the first bill that they actually move. Then Republicans are now put in a position where Mitch McConnell will have to be saying no to actually giving Americans the right to vote, including white folks, black folks, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans, and also Republican voters.
You have hit the nail on the head. None of what we have proposed or are going to propose has any color, any race labeled at the top. It is not the Black Voting Rights Act of 1965. It is not the Black Restoration of Section 5 Act. It is clearly to empower Americans to go into the ballot box silently, without intrusion, and to vote their conscience or their desires. There should be no military raids in the voting booth to tell anyone of a different race or background that you cannot vote as you desire. And I would ask the question of Mr. McConnell as to who does he represent? A limited, small, partisan nationalist group that does not want to see the expanse of America vote under the Constitution and have the privileges of due process, which would be all people. What about the vulnerable, poor people in Kentucky that may have a difficult accessing the voting box? One of the things that we do in a massive reformation was to make sure that access to voting areas is made in rural and non-rural America, is made on made on reservations and pueblos, where Native Americans live. It would be to say if you live in a difficult location in rural Georgia, rural Mississippi, rural Texas, that you would be able to vote because we'd be required to have a voting site near you on campuses, university campuses of a certain size. We require you to put a voting box on that campus. So I would ask the question of Mr. McConnell, are you going to be the leader of America, or are you going to be a political hack that will deny people the right to vote?
All right, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks. In a moment, we're going to talk to Congressman Steve Cohen of Memphis. I want to go to our panel here. Eugene, I'll start with you. Again, first of all, this would be absolutely smart by Democrats coming out of the gate.
Yeah.
Because what it would do is it would force Republicans to literally say, oh, it's a bad idea for automatic voter registration. Oh, it's a bad idea to say you should have, of course, voting locations on college campuses. Oh, it's a bad idea to modernize voting machines across the state. They would literally be saying no to improving America's voting system.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. I mean, it's a couple things, and the Congresswoman gave us a lot to unpack. The first thing is that it'd be delivering on a promise directly from day one to the Democrat voters. Secondly, it'd be voter protections given to voters across the country that we didn't see in 2018 and 2016. I mean, I would love to see the Russians try to play around with, a new voting system like that. The third thing is that it would put Republicans on the defensive, and it will put, more specifically folk like Cory Gardner and Marco Rubio and some other folk that are up for re-election in 2020 on the defensive in very diverse states.
Avis, they can complain about voter fraud, things along those lines, but if you're talking about fixing problems in America's voting system, I would just love to see Republicans just whine and say, oh, this is a bad idea.
I would love to see that too. And quite frankly, though, even more powerfully, I would love to see the Democrats really push this. Because I have to tell you, in terms of the things that a lot of the leaders in the party have been public about in terms of their priorities in January, this hasn't been on the list. And this needs to be on the list. As we move forward, we need to make sure that when the Democrats take control in January, that they not only push forward in terms of the investigations that they're interested in terms of DACA, in terms of all these other things that they're interested in. Voting rights needs to be a priority, and as far as I'm concerned, it needs to be priority number one.
And tell you what, Michael, again, if whoever the Speaker of the House is going to be, if it's Nancy Pelosi, if it's going to be someone else, if it's going to be Steny Hoyer, if it's going to be Jim Clyburn, I have no idea who they're going to elect. Frankly, if I'm them, it would be literally a flurry of bills being passed in the first 30 days to put maximum pressure on Mitch McConnell and the United States Senate to deal with these fundamental issues happening in this nation.
I think they'll have, whoever the leadership is, you're right, we don't know yet. You know my position on it. I think it will be Speaker Pelosi. But I think the challenge that they will have, the leadership will have, is they'll be under a lot of pressure to do some kind of Mueller kind of investigation bill first. That's the pressure they're going to be under. I agree with you. I do think it should be a voting rights piece.
Okay, but here's the deal. Can't they do more than one thing at one time?
Yep.
I mean, that's what I have never understood. This whole idea that the United States Congress can literally only do one thing at one time.
You're right. And I think part of the problem is whether it's the Sunday talk show circuit, whether it's letters from constituents, that's what they're not going to want to talk about voter suppression on Meet the Press and Face the Nation. They should, but I don't know if they will.
But here's why they should not do the Mueller first. It's the same reason why. What do Republicans, they got mad at Trump when they said, dude, don't do health care first. Do tax reform first. Do low-hanging fruit. Get easy wins. And hold on 1 second. I want to now bring in Congressman Steve Cohen. We finally got him on the line here. Congressman, you just heard Michael Brown say what Democrats should do. I just fundamentally believe that you get low-hanging fruit. If they go after this voter bill and go after things along those lines first, then to me it's smart politics, and it's also creating momentum. And again, I just don't understand why. Maybe you can explain to me how the hell Congress can only do one thing at one time per session. Like really? I didn't realize you can't pass two bills in one day. That's just me.
Well, you're exactly right, and we have committee systems, and different committees deal with different issues all the time on the same day. And you're also right that we need to do some basic fundamental changes before we start investigating. We did what we called a 6 for 06 when we had a big victory in 2006 when I was a freshman. And Nancy Pelosi laid that out and included passing Lilly Ledbetter, a minimum wage, certain ethics laws, and reform of the earmarking and system and other changes to the laws. And we ought to do the same thing in voter rights and voter suppression, and the renewing the Voting Rights Act ought to be right at the top. And if we do that, we can show we're trying to do some things that are important for the average American, for the middle and low income and higher income too, because voting is something for everybody. And we also should pass a higher national minimum wage, and there should be some issues like that. And Trump can't then come back immediately and go, oh, look, all they're trying to do is impeach me, and have that argument. He will get in an argument with us regardless, because that's just his personality. Give him the opportunity to do it, and he'll do other things that are clearly impeachable and in need of investigation, and that will take care of itself because he will provide the ammunition, and the American public will want it to be looked into. But we need to be doing other things, protecting people with pre-existing conditions, try to create a better prescription drug prices, and try to have some areas where we can work and get something accomplished. Now, a lot of it will be difficult with the Senate, and I don't know that they'll want to make voting easier, because if all Americans voted, there wouldn't be too many Republicans around.
But again, though, I think it puts pressure on a Mitch McConnell, because what he would, in essence, be saying is the hell with actually improving America's voter system. That, to me,
You're right.
is what I think is important, because now it puts them on the defensive to have to defend nonsense.
You're exactly right, and he would have to do it, and we do need to put him on the spot. And that's much of what we can do as long as since we don't have the Senate. We can pass smart, good changes in the law from the American society and for the overwhelming majority of people in the country, even the Trump Republicans, and they can see that the Republican leadership doesn't want to do things that they know make sense and are good for them as well. So we do need to do that. Put them on the spot.
Congressman Steve Cohen of Memphis, I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And you have the second best barbecue in America behind Texas.
Well, good luck with UAB. Good luck with UAB this week.
We'll handle UAB. Trust me, that's not a problem. Congressman, I appreciate it.
Take
Thanks a
care,
lot.
Roland.
I appreciate it.